The capture captain Marcus Kane felt the familiar weight of defeat as energy shackles bound his wrists. The sleek silver walls of the Zephyrian detention cell hummed with alien technology, constant reminder that he was far from home. 3 months ago, he had been leading routine patrols along the outer rim of human space. Now he sat in the most feared prison complex in the galaxy, awaiting judgment from beings who considered humans nothing more than primitive savages. The Zephyrians were an ancient race, their crystalline bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as their primary form of communication. They had ruled 17 star systems for over 10,000 years, long before humanity had even discovered fire. To them, humans were newcomers, barely evolved creatures who had stumbled into space through blind luck rather than true intelligence. Kane's cell door shimmered and dissolved, revealing 3 towering Zephyrian guards. Their leader, whose crystal formations glowed with deep purple authority marks, gestured with a limb that resembled living glass. The universal translator in Kane's ear crackled to life. Human prisoner designation 7741. You will now face the Grand Tribunal. Your species has violated sacred boundary laws by entering the Forbidden Nexus sector. The penalty is dissolution. Kane had heard of dissolution. It was a process where the Zephyrians would break down a being's molecular structure, studying every atom before complete annihilation. They considered it both punishment and scientific advancement. He stood slowly, his human dignity intact despite the circumstances. A journey through the prison complex revealed the true scope of Zephyrian power. Corridors stretched for kilometers, filled with prisoners from dozens of species. Kane recognized the reptilian vortex, gaseous nebulan entities contained in specialized chambers, and even a few of the proud titanium-based metalloids. All had challenged Zephyrian authority. All had lost. The tribunal chamber was a massive sphere suspended in space, its transparent walls offering a view of the surrounding star cluster. 12 Zephyrian judges floated in formation, their combined light creating a rainbow of judicial authority. At the center sat High Judge Crystalline, the oldest known being in the galaxy, whose body contained the memories of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth's sun had formed. Kane was positioned on a small platform in the chamber's center. The energy field around him served dual purposes, preventing escape and amplifying his voice so the judges could hear his final words. It was a tradition among the Zephyrians to allow condemned beings one last statement before dissolution. High Judge Crystalline's patterns shifted to deep blue, indicating formal proceedings had begun. Human creature, you stand accused of violating the Nexus Accords established before your species achieved sentience. How do you answer these charges? Kane looked up at the assembled judges, then at the vast starfield beyond. Somewhere out there, humanity continued its journey among the stars, unaware that one of their own was about to become a cautionary tale. He took a deep breath and prepared to speak words that would change everything. The unexpected defense, honored judges. Kane began, his voice steady despite the gravity of his situation. I do not dispute that my ship entered the Nexus sector, but I challenge the assumption that this was a violation. A ripple of surprised luminescence passed through the assembled Zephyrians. In 10,000 years of judicial proceedings, no species had ever challenged the Nexus Accords. High Judge Crystalline's patterns shifted to an ominous red, indicating dangerous territory. Explain yourself, human. Your ignorance of our laws does not excuse your transgression. Kane stepped forward as far as his energy bonds would allow. With respect, Your Honor, ignorance is not my defense. Knowledge is. He gestured toward the starfield visible through the chamber walls. The Nexus sector contains the remains of the progenitor civilization. My ship didn't stumble into forbidden territory. It was following a distress signal. The judge's collective glow dimmed in surprise. The progenitors were considered a myth by most galactic civilizations, a legendary race that had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life before mysteriously vanishing. Only the Zephyrians knew the truth of their existence, and they had kept that knowledge secret for millennia. Judge Crystalline's voice carried a new edge of concern. Impossible. The progenitor ruins emit no signals. They have been silent for eons. Silent to Zephyrian technology, perhaps, Kane replied. But human neural patterns operate on different frequencies. We discovered something your species missed. The progenitors didn't just vanish. They encoded their final message in quantum fluctuations that only developing species can detect. Lieutenant Rebecca Torres, Kane's science officer, had made the discovery purely by accident. While studying stellar background radiation, she had noticed patterns that seemed almost like music, complex harmonies that resonated with human brainwaves. It took weeks to decode, but the message was clear. A dying civilization's attempt to pass on crucial knowledge to whoever might follow. Kane continued his explanation, watching as the judge's patterns shifted through various spectrums of disbelief and curiosity. The message contained coordinates to their final archive, hidden in the Nexus sector. They wanted their knowledge preserved, passed on to species capable of understanding it. And what knowledge could primitive humans possibly comprehend that we, in our wisdom, could not? Judge Crystalline's question carried the weight of ions. Kane smiled, a distinctly human expression that seemed to fascinate the assembled Zephyrians. The knowledge of imperfection, Your Honor. The progenitor's final message wasn't just data, it was a warning. They discovered that perfection leads to stagnation. Their civilization became so advanced, so efficient, that they lost the ability to grow, to adapt, to survive unexpected challenges. The chamber fell silent except for the subtle hum of life support systems. Kane pressed his advantage. Humans are imperfect by your standards. We're chaotic, unpredictable, often irrational. But those very flaws make us adaptable. We find solutions you can't see because we approach problems differently. Judge Vortex, whose patterns had been cycling through confused spectrums, finally spoke. You claim to possess progenitor archives? Prove it. Kane nodded toward his confiscated equipment. My ship's computer contains the decoded message and the archive coordinates. But more importantly, it contains something the progenitors specifically wanted delivered to civilizations like yours, a solution to the entropy crisis. Every Zephyrian in the chamber blazed with sudden intensity. The entropy crisis was their most closely guarded secret, a cosmic phenomenon threatening to unravel reality itself within the next 1,000 years. They had been searching for solutions for centuries. The human speaks impossible words, Judge Crystalline declared, but uncertainty flickered in the statement. The revelation high Judge Crystalline's patterns shifted to deep amber, a color Kane had never seen from a Zephyrian. According to his briefings, amber indicated profound internal conflict. The ancient being floated closer to Kane's platform, crystalline features reflecting the starlight beyond the chamber walls. Human Kane, you speak of matters that concern the fundamental nature of existence itself. The entropy crisis is not common knowledge. How could your primitive species possibly understand such complexities? Kane felt the weight of humanity's future resting on his next words. Because we've been living with entropy our entire existence. Your Honor, while your people achieved perfection and stasis, humanity has thrived in chaos. We've learned to harness disorder, to find patterns in randomness. He gestured toward the viewing portal where distant stars twinkled. Your scientists see the entropy crisis as reality unraveling. The progenitor archives suggest something different. Not an ending, but a transformation. The universe isn't breaking down. It's evolving into something new. Judge Vortex's patterns flashed skeptical orange. Impossible speculation, Our calculations show definitive universal decay within 947 standard years. Your calculations assume the universe follows the same rules it always has, Kane replied. But what if the rules themselves are evolving? Humans have a concept called emergence, when simple systems combine to create something entirely new and unexpected. We believe the entropy crisis is universal emergence. Dr. James Morrison, Kane's chief scientist, had spent months analyzing the progenitor data. The archives contained mathematical proofs that defied conventional physics, equations that seemed to describe reality from a completely different perspective. Most remarkably, they suggested that chaos and order weren't opposites but partners. In Cosmic Evolution, Dr. Kane continued his explanation as the judges listened with growing fascination. The progenitors discovered that trying to prevent entropy actually accelerates it. Your civilization's pursuit of perfection, your control over 17 star systems, your rigid order, it's creating the very instability you're trying to prevent. Judge Crystalline's patterns cycled through rapid sequences of blue and green, the Zephyrian, equivalent of intense thought. You suggest we are causing our own destruction? Not destruction, Kane corrected. Transformation. The archives show that civilizations which embrace controlled chaos, which allow for imperfection and change, actually help guide universal evolution rather than fight it. Humanity might be young, but we've mastered the art of adaptation. Judge. Prism, silent until now, suddenly blazed with brilliant white light. The human refers to the harmony principle. Ancient progenitor theory we had dismissed as impossible. Kane nodded eagerly. The harmony principle states that universe maintains balance through diversity and change. Zephyrian perfection disrupts that balance. But if your civilization partnered with chaotic species like humanity, together we could guide the transformation instead of being destroyed by it. The chamber erupted in cascading light patterns as the judges communicated in rapid, complex sequences. Kane waited, knowing he had revealed humanity's greatest discovery, that their perceived weaknesses were actually evolutionary advantages. Finally, High Judge Crystalline addressed him directly. Captain Kane, you propose an alliance between our species. But why should we trust beings we consider inferior? Kane smiled again, that uniquely human expression of confidence mixed with hope. Because, Your Honor, sometimes the student becomes the teacher. Humanity has something Zephyrian, perfection can't achieve, the ability to see solutions in seemingly impossible situations. He paused, then delivered his final argument. The progenitor archives don't just contain warnings and theories. They contain the actual mathematical framework for surviving universal transformation. But there's a catch. The equations can only be solved by minds that understand both perfect order and beautiful chaos. The implications hung in the chamber, like a physical presence. Neither species could save the universe alone. The test judge, Crystalline's patterns shifted to a color Kane had never seen before, deep violet, mixed with silver threads that seemed to pulse with ancient wisdom. Captain Kane, your claims require verification. We will examine these progenitor archives, but first you must prove humanity's alleged capability. The chamber's walls suddenly blazed with complex holographic displays, showing mathematical equations that hurt Kane's eyes to look at directly. The symbols seemed to writhe and change, defying human understanding of geometry and physics. These are the convergence calculations, Judge Crystalline explained. They represent our most advanced attempts to model the entropy crisis. For 3,000 years, our greatest minds have sought solutions. All have failed. Kane studied the swirling equations, feeling overwhelmed by their complexity. Then he remembered something Dr. Morrison had told him about the progenitor archives. Sometimes the most profound truths appeared simple to minds not constrained by preconceptions. Your Honor, may I request access to my personal device? It contains human mathematical frameworks that might offer a different perspective. Judge Vortex's patterns flashed suspicious red. You seek to introduce unknown technology into our sacred calculations? Not technology, Kane replied. Philosophy. Humans approach mathematics differently than Zephyrians. We don't just calculate, we imagine. After lengthy deliberation, the judges agreed. Kane's personal tablet was brought forward. It's simple. Human interface looking primitive beside the Zephyrian holographic displays. But as Kane began inputting data, something remarkable happened. The human mathematical models, based on chaos theory and probability clouds, began finding patterns in the Zephyrian equations that their creators had never noticed. Where Zephyrian precision sought exact solutions, human intuition found approximate harmonies that actually worked better. Fascinating, Judge Prism observed as Kane's calculations simplified massive portions of the convergence equations. Your species treats mathematics as art rather than pure science. Kane nodded, working feverishly as inspiration struck. We've learned that the universe doesn't always follow perfect logic. Sometimes it follows beautiful illogic that makes sense only in retrospect. Hours passed as Kane worked, combining human creativity with Zephyrian precision. The judges watched in growing amazement as solutions began emerging from equations they had considered unsolvable. But the real breakthrough came when Kane realized something fundamental. Your Honor, I think you've been approaching this backwards. You're trying to solve the entropy crisis. But what if the crisis is actually the solution? The chamber fell silent. High Judge Crystalline's patterns dimmed too. Barely visible levels, a sign of profound shock. Kane continued, his excitement building. The progenitors didn't disappear because they failed to solve entropy. They transcended because they realized entropy was universal evolution. The crisis isn't something to survive. It's something to guide and become part of. He gestured at his calculations, now showing elegant curves where there had been chaotic spirals. If Zephyrian order and human chaos work together, we don't stop the transformation. We help it create a new kind of universe, one where perfect order and beautiful chaos exist in harmony. Judge Crystalline floated closer, patterns now cycling, through spectrums Kane had never seen. Captain Kane, you suggest that our species' combined consciousness could influence universal evolution itself? Not just influence, Kane replied. Guide it. The progenitors left instructions, but they needed someone to complete their work. Beings who understood both perfection and imperfection, order and chaos, logic and imagination. The implications were staggering. If Kane was correct, humanity and the Zephyrians weren't just potential allies. They were evolutionary partners, destined to help shape the next phase of cosmic existence. But first, they had to trust each other enough to try. The new alliance, the transformation began immediately. High Judge Crystalline's ancient consciousness merged briefly with Kane's human awareness, creating a hybrid understanding that neither species could achieve alone. In that moment of connection, the final pieces of the progenitor puzzle fell into place. The universe wasn't ending. It was preparing to be reborn. And the entropy crisis was actually the cosmic equivalent of a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. The mathematical proofs are undeniable, Judge Crystalline announced to the assembled tribunal. The humans' insights have revealed truths that our perfection blinded us to. Captain Kane, on behalf of the Zephyrian Collective, I offer formal alliance between our civilizations. Kane felt a mixture of relief and excitement that made his human heart race. Your Honor, humanity accepts this alliance with gratitude and determination. Together, we can guide the universe through its transformation. The prisoner platform dissolved, and Kane found himself standing freely in the chamber for the first time. The energy bonds that had marked him as condemned now reformed. As communication links connecting him to the vast Zephyrian information network. Within hours, the news spread across 17 star systems. The Zephyrian Imperium, which had ruled through isolated perfection for millennia, was forming an unprecedented partnership with humanity. Other species watched in amazement as the galaxy's most advanced civilization openly acknowledged learning from beings they had previously considered primitive. Captain Rebecca Torres arrived aboard the first human diplomatic vessel, bringing teams of scientists and mathematicians who had been working with the progenitor archives. Dr. James Morrison's theories, once considered too radical for publication, became the foundation for joint research projects that would reshape galactic civilization. The work wasn't easy. Zephyrian precision often clashed with human intuition. Ancient Zephyrian traditions had to be balanced with humanity's chaotic innovation. But gradually, the two species learned to complement each other's strengths while compensating for each other's limitations. The breakthrough came 6 months later. Working together, human and Zephyrian scientists successfully created the first harmony field, a localized space where the laws of physics themselves could be gently guided rather than rigidly controlled. Within the field, entropy and order danced together in perfect balance. "It's beautiful," Torres whispered as she watched reality itself shimmer and flow like living art. The progenitors were right. The universe wants to evolve, not just exist. Kane nodded, standing beside his former judge, who had become his research partner. Judge Crystalline's patterns now included new colors that reflected human influence, warm golds and vibrant greens that spoke of hope and growth rather than static perfection. "The transformation will take centuries to complete," Judge Crystalline observed, "but we have begun something that will echo through cosmic history. Two species, working in harmony, helping the universe itself evolve into something greater." Other civilizations began approaching the human Zephyrian alliance, eager to contribute their own unique perspectives to the great work. The reptilian vortex offered their understanding of survival and adaptation. The gaseous nebulans contributed knowledge of energy flow and consciousness transfer. Even the proud metalloids shared their insights into structural integrity and lasting beauty. What had begun as a trial for violating ancient laws had become the foundation for galactic cooperation on a scale never before imagined. And at the center of it all was the recognition that diversity, not uniformity, was the key to cosmic evolution. Captain Marcus Kane, once a prisoner facing dissolution, now stood as humanity's first galactic harmony coordinator. His species had found their place among the stars, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple human gift of seeing possibilities where others saw only problems. The universe was transforming, and humanity was helping to guide that transformation. The greatest adventure in cosmic history had begun, and it would be written by minds that dared to imagine perfection and chaos dancing together among the stars. The end